Hello and welcome to the I Can Do podcast with Benjamin Lee. We're here to talk about tips and strategies to have an I Can Do mindset. Life is what you put into it. Get the most you can. Here's your host, Benjamin Lee.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of I Can Do. I am Benjamin Lee. Thank you so much for tuning in. We are going to do something a little bit different here. I'm going to be doing something a little bit different here, and I want to take you back to 2020, and this will explain what I'm getting ready to do on this podcast for the next 300 days, Lord willing. We'll see if I'll be able to maintain it. So back in 2020, I signed up to take some coaching lessons from two individuals from a company called Ultraspeaking. Michael and Tristan, the co-founders of Ultraspeaking. I signed up. I learned about them through a book called Ultra Learning. I have been preaching full-time, I guess, about 10 years by that time, but I've been preaching part-time. I've worked with Pfizer for about 8 years. I've gone through Toastmasters in previous years, but I was looking to see how else could I improve my public speaking. So when I read about Tristan and his journey into public speaking and making it into the top 10 of all Toastmasters and the World Championships, this was in the book Ultra Learning by Scott Young, I was curious, I was hooked, and I wanted to know, could these guys help me even with my public speaking? The answer, yes. Ultraspeaking has been fantastic. I started right when the pandemic started, and they had some free courses online, Zoom courses online, and I went to a lot of those courses. I signed up for every class, personal coaching session with Michael and Tristan. They reviewed sermons, they gave me tips, and at that time, my Ultra Learning project, and now I'm calling it an Ultra Speaking project, was to learn how to preach without notes. So I've always taken notes into the pulpit, and I've always written out my notes, outlines, and things like that. And I think it's still a good practice, but I wanted to see, could I preach without notes? So that was something that I was working towards, and it actually came in handy because right when the pandemic hit, well, everything with our worship services changed to the point that I was eventually recording sermons on my cell phone by myself in my office. But I can remember one person saying, did you actually have all that memorized? Or maybe they didn't say that, but they said you weren't using any notes. It looked like you were using notes. So at that time, I was slowly getting into the process of eliminating my notes. I was still writing out my outlines, and I would look at them, but I started preaching without those notes. And then eventually we went to the parking lot for worship services, and I had a microphone in one hand and the back of a pickup truck and a Bible in the other hand. So there was no room for my sermon outlines. So it was actually perfect timing that I had gone into Ultraspeaking. So fast forward 4 or 5 months, I was taking as many classes and courses. I did a webinar with Ultraspeaking talking about this journey that I had gone on. And then eventually I got into coaching, which was fantastic. And that added a whole nother dimension of learning some of the things that we talk about with Ultraspeaking: impromptu speaking, speaking on the fly, musicality in our speaking, the art of the pause, breathing, storytelling, and so much more. So it's been a journey these past 5 years where it has helped me with podcasting, because I started podcasting in 2019. So everything that I've learned with Ultraspeaking has benefited me with podcasting. I've played the games with my wife, with my son. My sister started taking some of the courses as well. And it continues to help me with my preaching. We're wrapping up a 2-year preacher training program where I worship and where I preach. And so I was able to impart some of this wisdom with the young man that's been working with us as well. So I think it was last week, I started thinking about what's next. And a couple of thoughts came to me. One, I had revisited Ultra Learning, that book, where Tristan de Montebello, talked about his journey. And one of the things that he did, he was working with Michael Gindler, they had met through Toastmasters. And so as he was preparing for this World Championship of Public Speaking through Toastmasters, those last, I think, 3 months or 3.5 months, he would try to do a impromptu speech every day at a Toastmasters somewhere. So he was getting booked every day and he was speaking every day. And there was a rationale behind that. So that helped him to see, okay, what else might he be able to create on the fly? And it certainly helped him long term with speaking as a whole. And then on Instagram, I was listening to Brian Tracy. I guess you could describe him as a you can describe him as a public speaker, motivational speaker. He's a coach. He's written numbers of books, and he talked about opportunities. One of the things that stood out to me was he threw out this number that what if you gave 300 talks in a calendar year? Now, I think he was talking more about at companies and things like that, but that intrigued me. I don't think I've ever done 300 in a calendar year. If I preach every Sunday, that's 52 sermons, and I don't preach every Sunday. When we had multiple worship services, that would bump it up to 104, but we don't have that anymore. I have spoken at different companies throughout the years, but I don't think I've ever done 300 in a calendar year. So I like challenges. And one of the challenges I thought of was, how could I do 300 talks? What if I did all of these talks impromptu style? How might I improve? What might come out? What kind of pressure would that be? Then I thought, okay, well, what kind of platform could I have? I have a family, I have a full-time job, so that would make it quite difficult to try to do that every single day for 300 days, trying to find a place to do that as well. But I then thought about this podcast. So what if I gave a brand new episode every day for the next 300 days, impromptu style? Now, I want the best, obviously, and yet this is a project that makes me a little nervous, excites me, and I'm curious what might happen, who this may inspire if I go down this path. So I want you, if you're willing, to join in with me because I want to go down this path. So what I am getting ready to do, and today is going to be day one, and as you can see on my cell phone, for those who are watching the video, there's a Ultraspeaking app. One of the games is called the timer. It's just a timer, but it's a timer where you can get a time and you get an opportunity to speak. So I've set this timer to 7 minutes, and right now that's going to be my goal for this podcast. Every time I do a new impromptu speech, my goal is to go for 7 minutes. And if you notice in this app, it says, you may not be able to read it from here, but suggest a title. So this app is going to give me my title that I'm getting ready to share with you. So this is how all of these episodes, the next 300 episodes, are going to be. And so I want to see, number one, can I handle it? Number two, what will come out? Number three, how might I continue to improve, get to an even further level with my public speaking? And hopefully along the way, inspire people to do the same. Public speaking is one of the greatest fears that people have. And death, maybe taxes as well. That's coming up here as well. But what if we leaned into that fear even more? What if we trusted ourselves even more to lean into it, even the impromptu style, and to see what happens? So here we go. I'm about to hit start training, and I'm going to share with you the prompt that it gives me. The mystery of energy. Today's episode is talking about the mystery of energy. One of the things I've been thinking about with respect to energy has been this idea of vibrations. I've heard a lot of different coaches. I see it on Instagram, this idea that, these vibrations that we all have and how we can notice when someone's vibration is off or something like that. That's something I have instantly thought about when it comes to the mystery of energy. What exactly is that? How do we actually measure something like that? And is it actually true? But there's other elements to think about when it comes to energy. The reality is all of us want a lot of energy. And if I'm being honest, I wouldn't say cheated when it comes to energy, but I have certainly used different supplements along the way to give me more energy. I can remember going back, I think, to when I first started with Pfizer in 2001. I had a lot of nervousness. I wanted to do really well. And so one of the things that I started turning to more, and I don't think I was doing as much of this, but I was starting to drink a lot of coffee. And the coffee got into a regular basis, right? So when I was living in Missouri, there was a gas station called Quick Trip. And every day I would drive down to Quick Trip and I would get some hazelnut coffee, I believe. Panera Bread had excellent coffee as well. St. Louis, Missouri was part of my territory. And I would pick up coffee there sometimes on the way home, which was like an hour and a half to a 2-hour drive. That gave me energy, but fast forward now, I know that coffee doesn't necessarily give us energy, but slows down some of those, I can't remember the exact name, where we don't, kind of suppresses the tiredness that we may have. And if knowing that, I think I may have gone down a different path, or at least I would have thought about it a little bit more, because even before I started with Pfizer, as I'm thinking about this, I guess it started back in college, actually, with the coffee. And also in college, it started with energy drinks. So I'm learning, just thinking about this right now, maybe you can relate to this. We all want to tap into energy. We want more energy. I can remember when I was working at a Gold's Gym that they had this drink called Razor. It was $1. I would drink it before I worked out. I was fired up. And I want to say it was those ephedra pills or some kind of caffeine pill as well. My junior and senior year in college, I would take those before I'd work out, and I'd get on the Stairmaster. I'm going as fast as I can, and I got puddles of sweat because I'm just sweating profusely with all of this caffeine running through my system. That was not the wisest way to get energy. But there's a lot of mystery when it came to energy. And one of the ways when it came to energy back then and even now, go to the caffeine drinks, whether it's coffee, pills, 5-Hour Energy now. Razor got bought by another company when I was working at Gold's Gym. And so this other company had a drink called Speed Stack. So I started consuming that. And I'd go back and forth and I'd have these terrible caffeine withdrawals. And then eventually I started drinking 5-Hour Energy with coffee, and I would take some breaks from time to time. This is where it really gets interesting. So let's hone in a little bit with the mystery of energy. When I actually got off the caffeine drinks, I started having more energy. Now, it did not happen immediately. There were withdrawals. It was awful, by the way. There was nervousness because I was thinking, what if my mind is not as sharp as when I'm consuming alcohol? And we get into this rhythm, or not alcohol, I'm sorry, but caffeine. And that's kind of a bad thing when I really say that out loud, that do I actually have to have caffeine, this fake energy, to really be myself? Or is it actually turning me into someone else? The mystery of energy is interesting. And maybe we just need to revisit this whole concept. The reality is there's lots of different ways for us to get energy. So let's begin to close here with how we can have natural energy. Number one, get a great night's sleep. Sleep is king. I have a book called Why We Sleep. Everybody talks about sleep. Tim Ferriss on his podcast talks a great deal about sleep. Everybody seems to be a sleep expert. And the reality is we just need to sleep more. How do we do that? Stay in a routine, go to bed at the same time, wake up at the same time, even if it's the weekend. You can even manipulate when you travel across different time zones of when you're going to wake up and when you're going to go to bed, so you can reduce some of that jet lag. The mystery of energy, stick with the basics. So number one, get a good night's sleep. Number two, get sunlight first thing in the morning. Get sunlight on our eyes. Mel Robbins on our podcast has talked a great deal about this. Don't pick up the phone first, but go out and get sunlight on your eyes. It's not rocket science. And I have a book called Power Eating. And one of the things in that book talks about really the power of sunlight. Get at least 15 minutes a day of sunlight. That will give us a lot of energy. There seems to be more and more evidence. I'm not a doctor, so you need to consult with your physician first. But high vitamin D levels and sunlight is naturally going to give us some additional vitamin D. Some other people may need more vitamin D as well. But whether it's sleep, sunlight, vitamin D from sunlight, taking vitamin D supplements or something like that, that is going to give us energy. Number four, hydration. Drink plenty of fluids, water. That has to be number one. Number five, you want more energy? Maybe it's not so much a mystery. Stay off of electronics. Cut off electronics first thing in the morning and before you end your day. So as I wrap this up, in conclusion, I've always been looking for more energy. And while I have turned to different drinks, supplements, pills, I think all the energy I've ever needed is already inside me, if I'm willing to go down that path and to stay on it. What about you? Are you looking for energy? Maybe it is not so much a mystery as we think it is. Thank you very much. There's 7 minutes. That's day one. Ultraspeaking, impromptu speaking, day one of 300. Thank you as you begin this journey with me with respect to speaking on the fly, trusting yourself or trusting myself and seeing what happens. I hope you like this episode of the mystery of energy.